It's no wonder then that 150 years ago, President Lincoln first protected the ground on which we stand. And then Teddy Roosevelt, who called the great trees here a temple grander than any human architect could possibly build, spent a whole bunch of time camping around here with John Muir, a man who gave life to what's been called America's best idea, our national parks. As he said after his visit, we are not building this country of ours for a day. It is to last through the ages.
When you think of America, chances are one of the first things that come to mind are its preserved open spaces, like Acadia or Yellowstone National Park, or maybe Yosemite as pictured here. Whether it be national, state, or local parks, these natural beauties of our country are treasured by its people and sustained by its leaders. That is why it is important that the candidates for president in 2020 listen to elected leaders across the country to hear their plea for preservation and conservation of our parks.
Well, as you know, before I was elected state senator 5 years ago, I was first selectman of the town of East Lyme. Prior to that, I was chairman of zoning. And from that point, as zoning chair, we began the process of what is now the 20-year plan to preserve as much as we can of Oswegatchie Hills. We changed local zoning regulations. We worked to acquire property and to try to make a contiguous parcel of 246 acres. What I've done at the state level, you may be familiar with a new plan to fund park operations in light of our given budget deficit. We created the Passport to Parks, which is a fee on people's registration that's dedicated 100% to operations of our state parks, which were before that not funded well enough, and they were falling into disrepair. Here in Connecticut, especially southeastern Connecticut, we depend on tourism. And it's nice to have people come here as tourists, but what do they do when they're here? We depend on a thriving arts and culture community, and our state parks are what people come and visit. So
the importance of open spaces in a small town like East Lyme, Connecticut is very important to not only its economy, but its people. Forests, parks, and even monuments can be an economic driver for a town, providing tourism that supports small businesses and surrounding towns or cities in the area.
Securing the open space easement on these spaces is very important because they'll always be preserved. While we grow these towns, it's those spaces that will always be there generations after generations. So important through preservation that we put deed restrictions on these properties. Oswegatchie walking hills, Darrow Pond, we have walking hills in our town, that we preserve them forever, that nothing can ever be built on these spaces. McCook's Park, well, we bought that from the McCook family. There's a deed restriction there that certain buildings can't be built in certain spots there, so it'll always be preserved.
Like John Muir said, we are not building this country of ours for a day. It is to last through the ages. Therefore, it is the duty of those elected to uphold these values. As the leader of the executive, the President of the United States has the ability to ensure those duties take place during his or her term in office. And so, candidates, our elected leaders ask you to keep small towns like ours in mind come this election season. It is so important to us and to the United States as a whole that we continue to preserve these lands for years to come.
In a recent interview with Representative Joe Courtney from Connecticut's 2nd District, national-level support for local wildlife conservation was shown by awarding federal grants totaling over $500,000. Support for local communities like Connecticut's 2nd District was highlighted by Representative Courtney in this Washington, D.C. interview.
I might suggest, them visiting our town or any town, USA, and taking a mental snapshot of what that natural space looks like right now, the habitat and the human pleasure that comes from those open spaces, the quality of life that comes from not having development in certain spots, and asking him or her to consider preserving that.
I would suggest to any state or presidential candidate, look at the big picture, look at the trickle-down effect, and look at the opportunities that we have to preserve this legacy of land for future generations.